a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
All right, welcome into another episode of the Women's Basketball Podcast. Mia O'Brien is traveling, and so we have a fill-in co-host this week, a guest co-host, an experienced co-host across several podcasts. Lindsey Gibbs is joining me. She is the co-host of Slate's Hang Up and Listen. She's the co-host of Burn It All Down, which is back. You should go check that out. She's also the women's sports lead at CBS Sports, and she is the publisher of the great newsletter Power Plays. Lindsey, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm thrilled to be back. Thanks for having me. And Mitch, long time no see.
That's right. Yeah. We were just together yesterday in Cameron Indoor Stadium for the big ranked on ranked matchup between Duke and UNC. Duke ends up winning that by 4 points. So we're going to start there with our starting five this week between the Tar Heels and the Blue Devils. 16th consecutive win for Duke, getting the narrow victory over the Tar Heels. More offense in this one than I think we've seen in some years past, especially the last time we saw these two teams play in Birmingham last year in the Sweet 16, where I think the winner scored in the 40s and North Carolina finished with like 38. It was just a
47 to 39 to be exact. Okay. Mitch, unfortunately, I do remember it. I wish I did not.
Yeah, it's funny because, leading up to that game, I get to Birmingham and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, aren't you, excited for Duke Carolina in the Sweet 16? It's going to be such a great game." And I'm talking to other kind of national reporters who don't see the Triangle teams as much as we do, and I'm just kind of like, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun to watch. This one was pretty good. I think, just the offensive, efficiency all around. We saw, Jordan Wood go off at the end of the first half there, hitting those 3 straight 3-pointers, and, Carolina dominant in the paint. I think 46 points in the paint. However, Courtney Banghart did her best to, I think, not get fined after this game in the post-game press conference when she was asked about the free throw discrepancy. 21 for Duke and 0 for North Carolina, which is just the second time that's happened in a game this year between two Power 4 teams. That was a stat that our friend Marissa Sisk over at Her Hoop Stats gave me. So just kind of a weird, thing on the box score there, and Duke gets the favorable whistle at home. What did you think of the free throw, difference, and just kind of what we saw overall from these two?
Yeah. To start with, overall, like you said, it was a good game. 16 lead changes.
Yeah.
I was impressed with both teams, to be honest. I kind of thought Duke might run away with it, but Carolina kept staying in there. They actually pretty much won every statistical category except for the free throws, which is quite something. To get people who might not know, we're not exaggerating when we say we kind of have some trauma from these past games. Not just that Sweet 16 game, but in their last 8 games, neither team has made it past 70 points. But more than that, in 4 of those games, both teams scored under 50 points in regulation. In one of those, I think it was Duke, or one of those 4 games went to OT, and one of the teams did make it to 50 points in overtime.
Yes.
But still, for 4 games to be under 50 points from both teams in regulation, it's been rough sailing. So I actually am not, I think, as negative about this game as so many people are because of the free throws. But because it was fun, and I think both teams showed a lot, and both teams can take a lot from this game. But there's no really excusing the free throw discrepancy.
Right.
Carolina, as you've mentioned on this podcast that I was listening to on the way to the game, you talked about how Carolina is notoriously bad at getting to the line. So a discrepancy is expected. But that much of a discrepancy, it's contact happens, and at some point contact is going to get called, and especially with Carolina playing so well in the paint. And it's just staggering. Carol Lawson tried to, after the game, be like, well, the reason it's actually not good. We weren't disciplined on defense. We just weren't playing defense. So they were wide open layups. And that was her quote, was just like, this was why, this is the box score is very misleading. I think that most of the time there was no call because there was no contact because we weren't anywhere near the layup line. And there certainly were times that Carolina got away in transition, that Toby Fournier was kind of nowhere to be found in the paint. Right. I think she got lost on a lot of actions in this game. I think both Sierra Toomey and Nyla did a good job of handling Toby.
Yeah.
But you can go.
It's interesting, coming into this game, I was watching ACC Network on Thursday night, and Elizabeth Kitley was on there, who I believe you have some shared history. Her father, Ralph, was your high school principal. I think I have that right.
Assistant principal. Yes.
Okay. So she's been doing some TV this year, and she was on ACC Network and talking about how, Toby Fournier is making a strong case for ACC Player of the Year. And I thought before this game she was, but yeah, Nyla Harris, I thought, really gave her some problems on both ends of the floor. And she struggled shooting, in this game. I think finished, 2 of 9, 6 points, but she did have 12 rebounds and 3 blocks. So that was good for her. Back to just the free throws again. I pulled up North Carolina's team sheet here, and they are 350th in the country in free throw rate and 360th in the country. There are only 363 Division I teams in percentage of points from the free throw line, which is staggering. So I think we expected a discrepancy, but maybe it would have been something like 21-6 or 20, somewhere in that ballpark, not 0. Like, there were definitely a couple plays where it was like, okay, they missed that. Like, Indiana VAR got hacked or, whatever. Like, there was definitely some missed calls there. I heard Debbie Antonelli talking about it during the Notre Dame NC State game, of just like, she's never seen a game like that before. And I think there was a stat maybe ESPN put out where I think this has happened in 3 ACC games this century, and 2 of them have happened at Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Oh, wow. And I also saw another stat, and that, when it does happen, it's usually not in competitive games, right? Mm-hmm. They're games that are blowouts, where maybe just one team is kind of nowhere to be found. I'm sorry if you guys are hearing some rustling of the desk. I'm home alone, and one of the dogs is just here. He's just in my lap. So, I don't know. This is as quiet as I can get it at this point. But
I think you're good.
But to bring us back to like the larger takeaways here, though, the free throw discrepancy aside, I do think Carolina should leave this game feeling pretty good. They are a much better team than they were a few weeks ago. I mean, we've seen them just fall apart in the clutch in some big games. We were both there at their game against Louisville, where they took it to overtime. It was like the most energy I felt in Carmichael beyond like the NCAA tournament games with Alyssa Utsby on the scorers table, because they had been, behind all game. They managed to take it to the, tie it up at the end. And then they missed free throws to win it. And then they didn't score a single point in overtime. Like, we've seen endings like that. The Stanford ending was pretty similar to these games. But I see a really well-balanced team, almost at times too well-balanced, to the point where you're like, well, who's in charge here? But I do think that the way Carolina kept punching back against Duke, I think should leave Tar Heel fans optimistic. It's not going to be, I don't think, this season that, the top 10 season that might have been predicted at the beginning of the year. But there's a lot to like about this group. And there's a lot to like about the way that Courtney Banghart has coached. And I think the same thing can be said for Duke. Their turnaround has been spectacular, and there's a lot to like about the way Kara Lawson has this team playing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think on Carolina, they had won 8 straight games coming into this one, and some good wins in there. At NC State, home against Syracuse, who's an NCAA tournament team. I think they have a pretty manageable schedule left in the regular season. They're going to go to Virginia Tech, home against Pittsburgh. That's a win, and then they're going to play at Virginia, and then you got Duke at home. I think if you win 3 of those 4. You're in good shape. I think at this point now, if you're a North Carolina fan, it's like, okay, the season has been what it is. Can we play our way into the top 16 and get a hosting spot? I think if you win out the regular season, you win those next 4, which means you get that win over Duke at home. That would be huge. And then you're going to have to make a run in the ACC tournament and hope some other teams in that top 16 like Oklahoma or Ole Miss, some teams like that kind of fall off and fall out. But I think it's in play still. But I do think that, coming off that loss at Stanford and that loss at Notre Dame, Carolina fans are probably liking where this team is right now. To only lose by 4 points at Duke with the free throw discrepancy being what it was. And not to mention, that the technical foul late on Indiana VAR was kind of a killer as well.
What did you think about that call? I feel like that call kind of got overshadowed because of the free throw discrepancy.
I did think it was a little soft. I'm all for just letting these players show emotion as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. There's not a fight or anything like that. She slammed the ball. It went a couple feet, whatever. I don't know. I think in a game like that where it's Duke Carolina and the emotions are so high, you can let that one go. But
yeah, I was borderline, but I agree. I think that there's just so much here. I think Carolina has to win out to get a number 1 seed because they just haven't had enough quad 1 wins, and they need them desperately. But I think if they can get an upset at Duke at home, which they have to feel is in play, and win 1 ACC tournament game, I think they could be a top 16 seed again. And that is not something I saw coming really even 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, for sure. 2 teams who were in the top 16 reveal that we'll get into a little bit more went off against each other on Saturday night. Also an ABC game, LSU, South Carolina. I was watching this one from my sister-in-law's house after I went and covered Davidson Richmond, which was a fun game. And there was some WNBA scouts in the building to see Maggie Dugan play.
Nice.
So that was interesting. So South Carolina goes into LSU, wins. There's a couple plays late where, if they go LSU's way, this game could have turned out differently, but it didn't. Ultimately, South Carolina 79, LSU 72. I thought I kind of felt bad for Flau'jae Johnson because she did so much to keep LSU in this game, but then she misses those free throws late. She misses the 3, but I think she had 4 offensive rebounds in the 4th quarter just to kind of keep them in it and keep it alive. But this is the 18th straight win in this series for South Carolina. I know some people are like, is this really a rivalry? It's been pretty one-sided. I think it still is just because these 2 teams have a history and there's so much emotion, and sometimes the rivalries are just about that and the sort of extracurriculars around. We had the bench clearing thing in the SEC tournament a couple years ago, and then the whole thing at South Carolina last year where the DJ played the song by Flau'jae's dad and everything. What did you think about LSU South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, big disappointment for LSU. I don't think there's any way to spin it. I think we're beyond the for a team like that is trying to maybe get a number 1 seed, trying to at least hold on to a number 2 seed, still has hopes to win the SEC, outside hopes. I mean, that's the tier that they see themselves as part of, right? They still have people on this team that won a national championship a few years ago. You've got Flau'jae Johnson, who's going to be a top pick in the draft. This is not a team looking for moral victories, or that should be okay with moral victories at this point in the season.
Right.
And so to be in a game, to play South Carolina that close, it's so hard to. South Carolina can just run away with these games, right? But you have them in your grasp, and ultimately you let it slip away. And I, Flau'jae Johnson is going to have many more great moments in her career. I'm not saying that she's not, but this was a disappointment. It's funny. I remember Courtney Banghart saying, I think it was India Navarre who had missed the free throws to send the game to Louisville in overtime, or that would have won the Louisville game.
Yeah.
I think it was Navarre. And I remember Courtney saying post game, yeah, she should feel bad right now. Like, that's not in like a ha-ha way, she didn't do what she was supposed to do, and
right.
She has to feel that and face that. I do think Flau'jae is going to face that, but this was bad. And I don't, whereas like I could see with Carolina, like they're at a point where they can still take a moral victory from being close against a top team. LSU, no, it doesn't hit the same, because I think they have a higher ceiling and higher expectations, and they've just set the bar higher. And honestly, they should have won this game. And
yeah, I think everybody thought coming into the season, like just on paper, looking at the two rosters, South Carolina dealing with all the injuries they've had, Chloe Kitts and Ashlyn Watkins, and everything else, and losing everything that they lost to graduation and the portal last year. I think everybody was like, okay, if there's going to be a time where LSU finally gets South Carolina, it's going to be this year. And then you add Malaysia Fulwiley into the mix. And
yeah. Oh, right. How did I not mention that?
Yeah. It's interesting, like the Malaysia Fulwiley conversation, because I think we all, I think it was implied pretty heavily that like she transferred because she wanted more playing time. And Kim Mulkey is basically using her the exact same way that Dawn Staley did, as like an off the bench spark. And in this one, like, really struggled with scoring, 1 of 8 from the floor. She did have 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals. So like getting it done in other areas. But, and like Kate Koval is someone else, like that was a big transfer portal get for LSU. And like, she played 6 minutes, scored 2 points. So yeah, like LSU is a team that, since winning that national championship has been to the Elite Eight back-to-back years. But I think very much like when Kim Mulkey is your coach and you have players like Flau'jae Johnson and Michaela Williams and you have all this talent, yeah, like you said, the expectation is that you should be beating a team like South Carolina every now and then, and you should see yourself contending for a national championship. And like, I just, as much as we've seen like at this point in the season, like I think this is probably another LSU team that maybe gets to the Elite Eight, and like that's probably the end of the line again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's disappointing. And I think there's with the Malaysia Fulwiley, there's a real wherever you go, there you are element to it, where it's like, maybe this is who she is, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, and if you read between the lines at CBS, our reporter Isabel Gonzalez was doing some preseason stuff on Fulwiley and Mulkey. And kind of if you read between the lines of the quotes that Mulkey was saying, it was like, oh no, now I see why Dawn did what she did, kind of thing almost,
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in the preseason about like, I don't know if she's quite ready to play point guard. And like, it's like, oh, okay, so we're just going to do this again. The other moment from this game was, there was one timeout where Kim Mulkey was caught, asking her players, who can guard Tessa? Because Tessa Johnson just scorched them. 21 points, 4 or 5 from 3. That was pretty funny. And great game for Tessa. I think it was a season high for her, 21 points. So, South Carolina has, they got shooters, they got guards. And I think they're going to be a team that, like, despite some concerns about the depth and stuff, like they're still going to be a team that is going they're still the favorites in the SEC. They're still going to be a team that is seen as a Final Four contender.
Yeah, it's Dawn Staley is a magician. I do not know how she keeps doing it. It is remarkable against the competition that she has to face in the SEC, that she can take a roster that this should have been a more down year,
Yeah, for sure.
And yet they, like you said, I mean, maybe it will end up being at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this is a team, like I said, I mean, South Carolina fans are hating me. It didn't feel like they won this game. I felt like LSU lost it. You know what I mean? So I think they are gettable on the right day. But ultimately, it's still really, really impressive what's done.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, like the SEC this year. I mean, we've seen South Carolina lose to Oklahoma already. I think there's a chance that there might be a team or two that gets them in Greenville in the SEC tournament. One of those teams might be Vanderbilt, who we'll talk about here in our number 3 slot. We'll get to Texas later, but it was a big week for Vanderbilt. They played 3 games. On Monday, they beat Oklahoma by double figures, scored 102 points. Then on Thursday, they beat Texas 86-70. Then they're getting a number 1 seed on Saturday night in the top 16 reveal. And then, unfortunately, they lose at Georgia on Sunday by 2 points in a game that I think we were all kind of second screening on the press row there at Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Not initially, only when I got a news.
Oh, no. Yeah,
it was not one on my radar. I have to fully admit that until I got like a news alert or saw on Twitter or something, and I was like,
yeah, I checked the scores at halftime of Duke Carolina, and I was like, what's Vanderbilt doing? And there was 2 minutes left, so I pulled it up and watched the end of that. It was just a weird finish to that game. I don't really have the full context to like everything that happened, but as much as I've talked about Georgia playing a soft non-conference schedule, which they did, they have some impressive wins in SEC play now, and they're going to be a tournament team. I'm curious if that jeopardized Vanderbilt's number 1 seed slot, but nonetheless, like it's still a really impressive season for Shea Ralph, Michaela Blakes, Aubrey Galvin, the freshman. Do you have any like overall thoughts on Vanderbilt?
Michaela Blakes is just incredible. And I think the way that they played against Texas, I mean, they kind of broke Vic Schaefer, as we're going to talk about in a minute. But, it's not just Blakes either. And they're very apt to point it out. I'm just realizing I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Galvin? Yes. Is it just Galvin? It's just
Aubrey Galvin, the freshman. Yeah.
Yeah. I was making it more complicated than I needed to. Aubrey Galvin, their freshman, has an outside shot. I mean, I think Aaliyah Chavez is going to run away with the freshman of the year vote ultimately, but Galvin has a great case, and I think it's a real testament to what Shea Ralph is building there at Vanderbilt, that they're adding more elite players to that. And I've got to say, I mean, to talk about our world of triangle teams, I really thought Vanderbilt was going to be losing something with Camille Pierre gone.
Yeah.
And, to see them take a step forward after losing a forward like that has been really impressive. And every time I kind of think they're going to fall back to the B tier, right? But fall back with the Oklahomas and, maybe even Tennessees of the world. They get right back in. They're clinging on to that top 5. Do I think that maybe there will be somebody might make a shirt like, where were you when Vanderbilt was a number 1 seed? How was that like one, that 12 hours for you? I don't think that they're going to get, unless Texas completely implodes down the, which is in play. I have to say. I don't think that, I think getting a loss to Georgia, although I think that will still count as a quad 1 loss probably. So it's not as bad as it seems, even though they're unranked. But
I think that's right. I think because it was on the road, and I think Georgia was high enough in the net where it is a quad 1 loss. I think that's right.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to end up looking as bad on their resume as it does on first glance. Like you said, I mean, Georgia's in the top 25 now, right? At the AP. Like they got into it this week with the Vanderbilt win. So they're not the bottom of the SEC, right? This isn't,
No, I mean, they're a team that's going to make the tournament. Like they beat Ole Miss. I think they beat Kentucky as well. Like they have 2 or 3 like ranked, quad 1 wins. They've kind of shown in SEC play that like they are legit despite not really playing anybody in November and December. But yeah, Vanderbilt's interesting. I think it's still in play for them to get like that fourth number 1 seed now. I think you're talking about Vanderbilt, Texas, and Michigan probably all angling for it. I don't know if Duke, because they took 6 losses earlier in the season, I don't know if even if they run the table completely from here to the ACC title game, if they can realistically grab that fourth number 1. I don't think that's possible.
ACC is not strong enough. I think this becomes the ACC when ACC play started and there were only 2 or 3 teams in the AP top 25. It was just kind of like, well, they kind of, you kind of mess it up for the whole conference almost, right? Once you get to, it's like you lose, you're not going to have as many ranked wins. You're not going to have as many wins of the net because nobody can get those big wins anymore once you're, once you reach a certain point.
But I do think, like you mentioned, I think Aubrey Galvin, I think it's probably a 3-player race for freshman of the year between her, Leah Chavez, and Jazzy Davidson at USC. I think that Shea Ralph is like, if not the front runner, like definitely in like the top 3 of the coach of the year running, like just, I mean, doing what she's doing with a team like Vanderbilt that has some history, but lately, like in the past 10 years, has not been one of these teams that we talk about as like a contender. And then, I think it's interesting. I saw the Michaela Blake's National Player of the Year conversation start to creep up.
Yep.
There is Sarah Strong.
Yeah. I think look, we're trying to write some stuff, right? You gotta keep the content coming. And I think that there is a case, there's an outside case. Sarah Strong's running way with it. But I think when it was last week where Michaela Blake's tipped the scales to go above Audi Crooks for points per game to be number 1. And I think because of her well-rounded game, which is much more, I think, well-rounded than Audi Crooks, I think that kind of opened people's eyes. I mean, I know it did for us at CBS. We had, our writer Isabel Gonzalez write a little bit about like the case for her there. And so I don't think it's ridiculous. I mean, I think you have to, multiple players will have a case, but Sarah Strong, there's pretty much no way she's not going to win it.
Yeah, Sarah Strong, like you look at, like all the advanced stuff and like she's number 1 in everything. I think she always shows up in the big games, even if like against some of these softer Big East teams is only playing like, 20 minutes or whatever. In the big games, like she shows up and she's the reason why they're undefeated still. And I think like, if you just throw the stats out and you ask most basketball people, they will look at the field and say, Sarah Strong is the best player in the country. Michaela Blake's is great. However, Sarah Strong exists. So that's probably how that's going to go. I think the argument is going to be like, well, and this was the argument last year in the National Freshman of the Year race, which was basically Michaela Blake's is doing this in the SEC. Sarah Strong is doing this in the Big East. And last year they split the Freshman of the Year awards. I think the WBCA gives out one. That went to Sarah Strong. And then the U.S. Basketball Writers Association gives out the Tamika Catchings Award. That went to Michaela Blake's. So I do wonder if, like, I think there's 4 National Player of the Year awards. There's USBWA, AP, the Wade Trophy, and the Naismith. So, like, I don't know. Like, do we see Michaela Blake's win one of those? Maybe. But I would bet that Sarah Strong wins 3 at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, if Blake's, keeps this going though, it's going to be maybe then, if she keeps having 30 points per game, I think Vanderbilt would need to make it to the SEC championship game in order for her to even have a shot at it. If that makes, she's going to need her team to do something really remarkable as well, because, UConn's non-conference schedule was tough. So it's hard. I know the Big East, and I've heard your rants, deserves, all the knocking. And I don't get too blown away by any of their Big East results, but I do have to give them credit for their non-conference. And she showed up in those games.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it'll take Michaela Blake's having a really great SEC tournament and making it to the title game, and Vanderbilt doing it because of her, for her to really be in the Player of the Year conversation. But we're gonna pivot real quick to Unrivaled, where the 1-on-1 tournament wrapped up, and Chelsea Gray won, defeating Alicia Gray. I think Chelsea Gray was the number 2 seed, if I have that right, and Alicia Gray was the number 1 seed. Chelsea Gray.
It was like there's multiple number 1 seeds, multiple number 2 seeds. It was bracket style. They kind of divided it into front court, back court bracket so that you didn't just have all the versatile forwards making it, so that you could kind of give some guards some chances. And, last year in the final was Aaliyah Edwards versus Nafisa Collier. So you saw these versatile, wing and front court players really stealing the cake. And, here you had, battle of the guards kind of between the 2 Grays. It was really ugly in that last game. The championship games are the best of 3. And I hated how exhausted they got. And I think I would like some rules to be changed a little bit, maybe give them an extra timeout. Just the quality just went down so much. For any fault of the players, they were just gassed to the max. And I think it really hurt kind of the overall product. But at the end of the day, I mean, Chelsea Gray, point guard, still rolling. You kind of think she's maxed out her abilities, and then she keeps showing all the youngins how it's done. And she is, I don't know that there's any player that just delivers better in the biggest moments, right? Under pressure. She's just a winner, and she's not the best, year in, year out, game in, game out, the best player on the court. But when you're in the WNBA finals, when you've got the 1-on-1 championship on the line, she's going to figure out a way to pull through. And overall, I just thought 1-on-1, again, it was a fantastic tournament, and just so much credit to Unrivaled for doing it. So much credit to these players for putting themselves out there, because some of them do get embarrassed. You had both of our stud buds, Natisha Heidemann and Courtney Williams. They both got blanked in their, games. In the make it, take it, it's pretty easy to get blanked if one player gets really hot, right? You might not see the ball. And so, but I think there were a lot of really fun moments. We over on CBS, myself and Jack Maloney made picks from the second round on, and I think all my picks are wrong. You just don't know what's going to happen. It's so unpredictable, and there's so much talent out there, and it really is just something fun and different. And
I would have picked Kelsey Plum, and she took that 8-0 lead over Gray, and then got 12-0, blank, which I thought was wild. But
and I picked Paige, who was, I think, a lot of people's pick to win it all before it started. But the point guard just took out, just kind of kept knocking them out. So
I with Chelsea Gray, last week we got the roster for this qualifying tournament for the FIBA World Cup that's going to happen in March. Down in Puerto Rico, and Chelsea Gray is on that roster, and she was at the Team USA camp in Durham in December as well. And I think there's been a lot of talk about Team USA and kind of this changing of the guard, and you got the young players coming in with Caitlin and Paige and Angel Reese and everybody else. I kind of wonder if like Chelsea Gray still makes this Olympic team. Like she's going to be, I think, 36 by the time the 2028 Olympics roll around. But like, that's 2 years from now. I mean, you still look at her like still playing at a high level, just won another WNBA title, just won this. Like you mentioned, like I think there's something to be said about like having a winner like her in a steady hand and someone who just wins and knows how to make the right plays, especially if you're going to have a team that might be on a little bit of a younger side.
Oh, yeah.
Going into the Olympics, like having somebody like her sort of, school Caitlin and Paige a little bit when it comes to playing international basketball.
I think Kara Lawson being the point guard herself and, really valuing the veteran voices. But, doing, USA Basketball is putting, they're giving a lot of youth a lot of opportunity. And that's really good because they have not been great about that in previous cycles. It's been well documented. But yeah, I think she's in the mix for sure. And I would hope that they had a veteran point guard, if there's a big injury to, a Caitlin, like if there's something goes down, you need somebody experienced and there that you can put in that starter spot and know that they're going to be able to settle things down.
Number 5, our final thing in our starting 5 this week. It's time to talk about the CBA again. It was NBA All-Star weekend this past weekend as well. Adam Silver had some things to say. I'm just going to read his quote. When he was asked about the WNBA CBA negotiations, he said, quote, "What I would love to do is put pressure on everyone. Often these things tend to get done at the 11th hour. We're getting awfully close to the 11th hour when it comes to bargaining. I'm encouraged that there has been more back and forth over the past few weeks." I don't know. He kind of like said some things without really saying some things. We did get, I think it was last week, where the league did respond to the players' proposal. And we also saw today, we're recording this on Monday, Brianna Stewart is going to play overseas, going back to, I think, her club in Turkey, and playing with them for a little bit, which I think is going to maybe run into, if this all gets done and everything starts on time, the start of WNBA training camp. What's your read right now on where we stand with the CBA and if this thing is going to get done or not?
I think I'm going to surprise people and say I'm still optimistic. And there is still time. We've been going through our timeline of trying to plan out kind of some sort of content calendar for when the news drops, right? Just to get people behind the scenes look. I'm sure, CBS is not the only place doing that. What would we want to do? How would we cover free agency? All of these things once, if and when we get the CBA. And I was counting backwards of like, well, would they have to do a super rush free agency? I was like, well, even if they get it done in a month from now, they could still have a full month of free. You know what I mean? Like there is still, it wouldn't have to be like a 5-day free agency spurt, if you get it done in the next 3 weeks or so, I think you can still hit all your off-season benchmarks. And, there is some coming to the table. There is some softening of language. I've noticed a little bit from WNBA players, from Brianna Stewart, acting a little bit optimistic. They had this sit-down meeting a couple of weeks ago, face-to-face for the first time. And it was a chance for players to, I think, humanize things a little bit more for management. And I talked with Elizabeth Williams. I did a big Q&A with her for CBS. And, she did say that she left that meeting feeling more hopeful, right? That she's been very, I wouldn't say optimistic, but that just still that she felt more hopeful at the end of that meeting than she did when she went in. Of course, it was frustrating that it then took another, 5.5 days for the W to respond to the proposal that they had not responded to in over 6 weeks. But they did get a response in. There were some small movements on things like housing and player accommodations, according to the reports. You know, I haven't seen the CBA, and I don't have original reporting on that part of it. I did read that, you know, it looks like their salary cap has gone up from $5 million now to about $5.65 million, but it's nowhere near the 10-something million that the WNBA players have proposed. So there's a lot of room still to reach. And I know there's frustration on both sides, and especially on the player side, because they feel like they deserve a bigger share of the revenue, and they don't believe these stories that the WNBA is putting out there, that their proposal would lose the league $700 million, and that the sky is falling. And but for some reason, I'm still optimistic that a deal gets done. I think there's too much at stake for both sides. There's so much momentum, and it would be the biggest own goal ever if there end up being a lockout here over, you know, you hear, even if let's say the worst case scenario is this $700 million loss over the course of the agreement, right? Which we all agree, like, that doesn't include expansion fees. That doesn't include a lot of stuff. When you break that down per owner and per year and compare it to the franchise valuations, which are all rising north of like 300, 400 million, it doesn't sound that crazy, you know, like you know, even their worst case scenario doesn't sound that bad when you've got a league that is growing in size and scale and profitability the way that the W is right now. So I'm curious. The Brianna Stewart news cycle today started out by everyone going wild. It seems like she's just going back for this kind of one tournament. It's just a short stint. I'm sure she's getting a huge paycheck to do so.
That was my read on it, is like, it must be a giant bag.
She's getting a giant bag, and good for her. And, you know, you had a lot of people wondering, well, will this mess with the rules for prioritization or everything? But all the reporting, and I can honestly, you know, my behind the scenes, I didn't get a call. I wasn't reporting on this today, but you could tell some reporters that all got kind of the same memo from someone on the Stewart side being like, hey, no, this isn't a big FU to the CBA negotiations, or a sign that there isn't going to be a deal. I'm going to read Annie Costable's report. She said April 19th is training camp start date under the current CBA, but players have until May 1st to report before being penalized. And since we've already started the schedule, like they've already released a schedule for the year, they're clearly not going to change those dates or the prioritization for this year. I think it's very safe to say players have already signed contracts overseas. The owners aren't that diabolical, right? That would just be, at this point, if there's prioritization changes, it would take place afterwards. And so, you know, by joining Fenerbahce in April for the final six, this is not going to impact Brianna Stewart's ability to play in the WNBA. And I don't think people should read into this anything other than she is getting a lot of money.
I also think whatever, you know, I think Brianna Stewart is one of the many free agents this cycle whenever that opens up.
They're all free.
Whatever team she's on, whether that's Liberty or somebody else, they're going to be very accommodating because she's Brianna Stewart. And so if she misses a day or two of training camp, it's going to be fine. I'm with you. I'm also optimistic about I like you. I just think there's too much at stake. And I think that cooler heads will eventually prevail, even if it means like we have to fast track all of this stuff in March. When I was at the Davidson Richmond game talking to three people from three different WNBA teams, you know, some of them seemed to think that we were pretty close to the finish line in terms of getting something done. And then they were just kind of speculating of like, all right, so like, let's say, for example, like we get something done in a week and a half, like, all right, then they got to give us a couple of days to figure out what the expansion draft looks like. And then they have to give us a couple of days to figure out who we're going to protect. and then we have to do the expansion draft, and then we have to do free agency.
Right. That's the key. You have to do the expansion draft before free agency, and nobody knows what an expansion draft looks like in a world where everybody is free agents, because what is the rule? So there's a lot of questions. I don't want to act like I'm saying it's going to be a relaxed offseason when they get the deal done. It's going to be packed, but there is still time, right? They can still do this if in the next, by the end of this. Please, by the end of February. Women's basketball writers everywhere are asking you to not do this in March.
I keep making the joke that we're going to be covering the expansion draft on the Saturday between the Final Four and the national championship.
We probably are,
which is going to be not fun. But that is the reality. I think we're heading towards. March is going to be very busy. Okay. Let's turn our attention to the beef.
Pure beef.
Okay. We talked about Texas a little bit earlier. Vic Schaefer, I think, the second SEC coach in the past, week and a half to throw his team under the bus publicly. I believe after the loss to Vanderbilt said something to the effect of, "This is the softest team I've ever had." Something about that, they didn't have any heart. He just kind of went full. It was very much like what Kim Caldwell said after the South Carolina loss, where she was like, "This team will just quit on you." He just kind of said it in some different ways. What I thought was interesting. Just about the whole kind of the differences, I think, between what Kim Caldwell said and what Vic Schaefer said is a couple of days later, Kim Caldwell kind of tried to walk some of hers back a little bit and admitted hey, that was not a flattering moment for me or for this program. And I hope that it turns into something positive. And I think it did, because they bounced back and they got that win over Missouri. And then they played really, really well against Texas on Sunday, who I think everybody would say Texas is a better team than Tennessee. But then Vic Schaefer, I feel like he has done this for much of his career. Vic is just somebody who likes to complain. And Vic is somebody who I think rarely we see him kind of take ownership or accountability for his team's faults. I almost feel like whenever Texas loses a game where we think they shouldn't have lost, or it's on a big stage or something, it's never his fault. And I was reminded, he's complained about, playing the SEC tournament in Greenville, South Carolina. And last year he complained about the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, being at two sites instead of 4, and how that shrinks everyone's practice time, and you have to have a shoot around time and a weird time. And he's complained about this year about his SEC schedule, and he thinks the SEC office is out to get him. And then on Sunday, after they win against Tennessee, I don't really know what kind of context the question was that was asked, but he said, I'm just going to read the quote. "At the end of the day, I don't think anybody out there wants to walk in Coach Caldwell or my shoes. At the two most tradition-rich women's basketball programs in the history of the game, in my opinion, Texas, Tennessee, and Stanford, those people didn't show up in the 90s. A quick aside, I don't know if that's a shot at UConn or what that is, but I digress. We're going to move on. Those schools had been here since day one. When I take over at Texas and Coach takes over here, we're not here to be good. Good will get you fired. And so for us, trying to get our kids to be great, because that is what's required at our schools. And that's what we signed up for. This isn't a nice life job. If you want a nice life job, go coach some 3-name directional school where they don't care. You don't go to Tennessee or Texas to retire. But we know what we signed up for before you go criticizing coaches who sacrifice time with family, with children. She's got a newborn. But before you go criticizing them on social media, you come walk in their shoes. And that's our job, to get it to these kids, to let them know. I basically had my legs cut out from under me on so many things with today's world and how college athletics is, but I will not give in to teaching these kids accountability and responsibility. So like I saw that and I was like, like there's a lot of jobs where people sacrifice time with their family and their kids. Vic, that's what the money's for. That's what you make $2.3 million a year for.
Right. The thought that Texas, the head coach position at Texas and Tennessee are not desirable coaching jobs.
I just thought it was very weird.
Absolutely laughable. And it's, you know what, like, I didn't get as mad about the calling out of players as I think a lot of people did. I think, it works sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes that's a button that needs to be pushed, and coaches push it for a reason. And, the players are getting paid now, and it does.
Absolutely.
It's I don't want to act like I'm heartless or anything at all to them. I don't want any player to be in a abusive situation at all, but there is a such thing as tough love, and there is a such thing as calling people out. And, that can be an effective method at times if used, appropriately. Not all teams and not all players, respond well to coddling. Mm-hmm. And so I give a little bit of way to coaches to figure out what works best for their program and their players. And, this tech team is good, and he's gotten a lot out of them. So there's that. But I did have a lot of problems. And if you read his quotes about the no heart, he says, this is my team. I'm accountable for them not having heart, sure. A little bit of West style of being like, well, they did horrible. I mean, that's on me. They did horrible, that's my fault. But pointing out how bad they are and then saying, but I'm the coach, so it's on me, type thing. But still, at least he did say those words, I'm accountable. But I thought the follow-up was laughable because here's the thing, Vic. If you get to criticize your players publicly, other people get to criticize you publicly.
Absolutely.
Like that is quite literally part of the job.
Yes.
And so for you to be like, you can't criticize me because you wouldn't want this job. That's like saying a sports reporter can't, I can't criticize Rory Harmon because I can't make a pass. You know what I mean? Like, no, I can point out that it's bad that Flau'jae Johnson missed those free throws, even though I know I would be in the fetal position if I was under that much pressure. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's right. That's not how this works. And so if you dish it, you have to be able to take it. And so that was I thought that was lame. And maybe he was really trying to stand up, give him the bit of dot. Maybe he was really trying to defend Kim Caldwell the most there. And, I can see him getting carried away with that and trying to come to her defense. He was in Tennessee. They just beaten her and just really getting himself wrapped up in it a little bit too much. But also I could just be giving him the benefit of the doubt, but too much, and we'll have to see. But listen, Texas, I'm going to be very curious to see how they finish out this season, and how the players respond. But it is, it's interesting. It's getting funny. And what was it, Dawn Staley, who was like, well, I wouldn't have said what Kim Caldwell said. I would have maybe said that privately.
Yeah, someone asked her, hey, what would advice would you give to Kim Caldwell? And she's like, well, I wouldn't say it publicly, but maybe, with Vic, I think that was his intention to sort of defend Kim Caldwell. But he kind of got carried away, and it turned into this like, don't you dare criticize coaches who make millions of dollars kind of thing. And it's just like, buddy, like, again, like, you make $2.3 million a year in annual base salary. I'll walk in your shoes for that much money. I probably won't win that many games, but I'll try to do it, and I'll let people criticize me and whatever. Like, you're getting paid. The players are getting paid. Not for nothing, but you play at a public university. So you're open to criticism. Sorry.
That's literally just how it is. And you quite literally started this. Do you know what I mean? It's just...
The other thing with Vic that I thought was weird was the whole, like, Rory Harmon didn't play the final 15 minutes. of the game against Vanderbilt, and he was like, "Oh, that wasn't a benching. I didn't bench her." It was like, "Well, she wasn't in foul trouble and she wasn't hurt, and she didn't come in the final 15 minutes. So it seems like you benched her." I think that's by definition what that is. When, a week and a half ago, he was like, "You should throw the Lieberman Award away if you don't give it to her." So it's like, all right, well, you got to pick a lane here. Like, can she not play against Vanderbilt, or is she the best point guard in the country? Like,
right. And the truth is, like, she's a really great point guard, and there's some games where she is unplayable in because of her size. And that is just how it is, right? But he can't come out and kind of say it that clearly. Although I was just reminded of Courtney Banghart when asked about Lainey Grant basically being benched, and how Courtney Banghart was very defensive about that.
Yeah, she was like, what did you say? Like, she played 32 minutes. We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, she could play with 32 minutes. We don't need to parse about when it was. And the person was like, well, but she wasn't played down the stretch.
In crunch time.
In crunch time, she was not out there. And Courtney, wanted that to be a non-story, but didn't do a good job, I would say, making it a non-story with her reaction. So anyways, these coaches, I don't envy the decisions they have to make. And like you said, like Vic might have had their basketball reasons to not play Rory Harmon, as great as she is, in some matchups.
For sure. All right, we're gonna go to making money with Mitch in a second, but before that, I need to mention OG Light Bracket Night, which is coming to Longleaf Swine. I got 3 words for you: barbecue, beer, brackets. This is Monday night, March 16th. It's the day after Selection Sunday, down at Longleaf Swine in Raleigh. Mia and I will both be there. Lindsey, you're invited as well. You want to come out and have some beer and barbecue and, sort through brackets and stuff.
I love all of those things. So you might just have to save me a table,
Absolutely. So yeah, you guys can come out. It's open to everybody. You can get your tickets at oglightbracketnight.com. Again, it's $49. I get you a barbecue buffet, a pint of OG Light, and a ticket to the show. Ovius and Julia, we're going to do a live show. Mia and I will be there weighing in as well. And yeah, you got women's brackets. We'll help you out with that. You got men's brackets. Ovius and Julia will give you some guidance on that. So again, oglightbracketnight.com. Go check it out. Beer, barbecue, brackets, basketball, all the bees. Okay, we're going to go to the picks this week. I rebounded last week. I went 2-1. Nice. Unfortunately, I picked Duke to cover an 8.5 point spread against North Carolina. I thought that they could beat them by that much. It didn't turn out that way. So, but Richmond covered 5.5 at Davidson, and then I picked Vanderbilt to cover 9.5 over Texas, which they did. So we are 24-15 on the season now, and I got 3 games coming up. This first one, I think both you and I will be there on Thursday night.
That's the plan. Although I'm not looking for. I feel like it's going to be a blowout. What we didn't mention that NC State lost to Notre Dame this week. So
no, we did not.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. NC State is at Duke. Duke is a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to take Duke to win and cover that. I was talking with some NC State fans on Twitter, and I was just like, it's a solid team. I don't see them making the second weekend of the tournament this year. Like, the talent is there. I just don't think they play consistent or cohesive enough. There's just like too many times where it's your turn, my turn, and we're not playing as a team at NC State. And I'm not really sure what is missing aside from just leadership on the court from the players.
Zoe Brooks is not a good enough leader. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. And I wrote a piece earlier in the year saying that she was stepping into it. It seemed like they were turning a corner. And, maybe it's unfair and there's more happening behind the scenes. And I think Zoe Brooks is an awesome player and a great person and a lot of fun. And I don't know that I think she is a co-star though, and not the main star and not the main conductor. And
I agree.
And ultimately, I think Wes figured that out really early this season and has been lost at what to do ever since.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of games where Zam Jones is the only one actually trying to do stuff on both ends of the floor. And it's just not enough sometimes. And she's not a consistent enough scorer and shooter for her to be the number one bus driver all the time. And I feel like, yeah, like you said, Zoe Brooks was the third option to 2 first-round WNBA draft picks last year. And she was asked to be the number one this year and just hasn't played out that way.
Yeah. I mean, and, maybe you think a voice like, there's nobody that stepped up. Camille Pierre clearly does not want to be the leader and the voice. And like everyone is just kind of deferential to everyone. And you're not getting anywhere like that, unfortunately. I mean, you'll win some games because you've got a lot of talent. And when it's clicking, it's really fun. But what is the constant with NC State? It's falling apart down the stretch in big games. It's just, from, the one team they didn't do it against was Tennessee. We saw it really badly against USC early in the season. And then it just kept going against Oklahoma. They almost had that game. And then against Louisville,
Carolina.
I mean, it's just bad.
Yeah. All right. So the second pick here, we're going to go Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus to the messy Big 12, where anybody can beat anybody, it seems like. I'm going to take Oklahoma to cover as a 6.5-point underdog at West Virginia. I like the way Oklahoma State is playing. They're a really good three-point shooting team. Oklahoma State, yes. Yes, the Cowgirls, not the Sooners. That's Saturday, ESPN Plus, 2 p.m. Eastern. And then on Sunday, big game in the Big Ten, Michigan is at Iowa. Right now, Iowa is a 1.5-point favorite. This is noon Eastern on Fox. I think Michigan is just the better team at this point, despite Iowa being at home. So I'm going to take Michigan as the 1.5-point underdog.
I like all those.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope we get some wins this week and continue to have a winning record on the season. We're going to pivot to our last call now. I wanted to start here with the lawsuits against Tori Verity, which broke after we recorded last week. I wrote about these over at USA Today, got copies of the lawsuits, and put something out. Basically, the kind of summarize here, Tori Verity, Pitt's women's basketball coach, is being sued by 6 of his former players for a variety of things. There's been allegations of basically everything from, being forced to play while injured to, Title IX violations, to him saying, I think, some racially insensitive things, to saying some misogynistic things, to allegedly pitting black players against white players. Overall, basically all the lawsuits say that Verity inflicted, quote, emotional, psychological, and physical abuse against the players, and he created, quote, a hostile, discriminatory, and retaliatory environment. Tori Verity has coached in Pitt's 2 games since, both of those losses to Syracuse and SMU. Pitt is standing behind him, which is kind of crazy to me, simply because he has given them no reason to stand behind him, because he has not been very good as the women's basketball coach at Pitt in 3 seasons. And I don't really know how this is going to play out in the end, because while there's a lot of things here that makes Tori Verity look like a bad human being, I'm not entirely sure if there's stuff in these lawsuits that would get him fired for cause, so to speak, to get Pitt out of paying whatever his buyout would be. And he has 3 years on his deal left beyond the season. And Pitt is broke. Pitt is one of the poorest teams in the ACC, and their athletic department is kind of a mess. And they might not fire Tori Verity for all this stuff, and they might not fire Jeff Capel for just not winning games on the men's side this year. So I'm very interested to see how this kind of goes on and plays out. I didn't know if you had any overarching thoughts about Tori Verity and the lawsuits.
Yeah, I mean, the lawsuits are devastating if true, and I still think we see too much of this. I realize people will think I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I'm sitting here saying that what Vic Schaefer didn't bother me that much, and that I'm a fan of like hard coaching, but there's a line, and that line is, about health and racism and sexism and misogyny and protecting your players. It's not about protecting your players from, criticism of any kind or pushing them hard, but it's, of allowing them to be in a non-discriminatory environment, and one in which their identities are respected and where they feel safe as women of color, as gay women, if, it's whatever type of person that they are, that they feel like they are in a safe and supported environment where the only thing that matters is how well they're playing on the court and whether they're treating people right off of it. And so I do think that abusive coaching has been long idolized and kind of valorized and glamorized. And there's this narrative that kids today are just so soft and can't take it. But it takes a lot, to file a lawsuit and to have six players come together and do it. It just doesn't strike me as something that you would do frivolously and you would do because you're mad about playing time and because, it's like a personal vendetta, which is always like what people say. And I think what's clear is that Pitt does not care about women's basketball at all.
Agreed.
And this coach is a yes man, and he will just do whatever the administration wants him to do and is not going to complain. And he probably doesn't push for better resources, and he doesn't ruffle any feathers, and he knows his place in the hierarchy and will, talk to boosters, and that's it. So I think unless they get pressure from boosters, which it doesn't sound like they even have many at this point, then I don't see anything changing. Because like you said, they're broke, they're not going to want to do the buyout, and this stuff is hard to prove, and it might even if he's found guilty in that, like the court document, like I don't even know what in his contract that would, what type of clauses are in his contract. And so it's sad. It's just sad. I'm sad for these players, and I hope that they are getting the support that they need. And I hope that the current Pitt players are getting the support that they need, because I'm worried for them.
Yeah, it's a bummer of a situation. Pitt they've had one winning season since they've been in the ACC, which is over 10 years now. And yeah, I think like you said, it's pretty clear that if they don't do anything, it sends a pretty strong message that they just don't care about women's basketball. Whether or not you have to eat a buyout or not, it shows if you don't do something here, you don't care. Because this is not going to get any better. Because at least you can suspend them with pay or just put them on leave while the investigation is ongoing. And it seems like they're not even doing that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Show that you're taking these allegations seriously enough to put in an interim coach, let him stay home for a little bit and at least look into it, Yeah. Because, if you're a parent of a recruit, and Tori Verity is allowed to coach the rest of his tenure, which is 3 additional years beyond this season, you're not going to send your kid to Pitt after reading all this stuff. So it's not going to get any better there in terms of wins and losses. So I don't really know what Pitt has to gain by keeping him around, but that's the situation there. If anything develops, we will definitely circle back to it on a later podcast. Marina Mabry went on Sue Bird's podcast recently and basically kind of talked about shoving Caitlin Clark and kind of admitted, she took it a little bit too far and her emotions got the best of her. That came out recently. I kind of aggregated that and wrote a little thing today at USA Today. I just thought it was kind of interesting, like her reflecting on it a year later and, saying, that was ridiculous is what she said. That was obvious that my emotions of us losing. And then she low-key punking our team on top of it. That was too far. That was too much. So kind of, I think the overall kind of conversation was, it's a good, listen between her and Sue Bird, and Aaliyah Edwards is on there too. But just kind of balancing, Marina Mabry's a fiery player and we like fiery players, right? But finding that balance of like, mixing things up and then taking it too far and kind of blindsiding Caitlin Clark in that moment. So,
I'm fine with it. I think Marina Mabry is candid and usually owns up and is fun and also would like all the Iowa people to stay out of her mentions. And so good for her. I think it's a smart move, honestly.
We don't need to pile on Marina Mabry now.
Not that anyone's gonna calm down, but she's making a business decision. So there you go.
And Marina Mabry leads Unrivaled in scoring this year, by the way, which is pretty awesome. We got some Hall of Fame finalists. Candace Parker and Elena Deladon, both up for Naismith Hall of Fame. I know you covered the Mystics closely and covered, some of those EDD teams. It'd be pretty cool to see Deladon in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, these both have to be first ballot Hall of Fame. I
think so.
Lane Deladon. Candace Parker obviously is, and then Deladon's career was cut short, but she was a 2-time MVP and a champion, and there are not
and
many.
Only 40, 90 player.
Yeah. And so, Elaine Deladon is still the best basketball player I've seen in person. Like during her peak, like there was nothing, and I'll be forever mad at the gods for hurting her back, and she literally wrecked the rest of her career pulling the Mystics to that championship. And her back was never the same, but give her flowers, please.
Yeah, I just remember like a week after the Mystics won that title, Deladon, my back is tore up. And then it was never the same. So sticking kind of up in the DMV, Maryland, big win over Ohio State. 6 spots up in the rankings. I saw that, they came back from 19 down, which I think is tied for their biggest comeback in program history. And it's their first ranked road win, I think, in 4 years. So
wow.
Big win for the Terps and Brenda Free.
They looked, they had all these injuries in December, and then Big Ten conference play started out terribly. They were in the top 10 start of the year, dropped as low as number 22 in the rankings. They're back up to number 14, and will be in the mix to be able to host in the first round. And I thought this team might fall apart completely, but it's a Brenda Freese team, and so I should have known better.
Never count out Brenda Freese. I know you wanted to mention a story about Ole Miss.
Yeah, one of our writers over at CBS, where as you guys can tell by now, I do a lot of editing, is Isabel Gonzalez just did a piece on how Ole Miss, I didn't realize that they were displaced for so long after the ice storm that hit a few months ago. So they ended up playing multiple road games in Birmingham, and they were away from their campus for almost 2 weeks. Because of scheduling stuff, they didn't have a home game for almost a month. And like a real true home game. And they actually managed to gain some ground during this 2 weeks. So I hadn't heard much about it. And so I was glad Isabel got to talk to Coach Yo about what that experience was like, and having Birmingham really rally around them. And that's where they got their upset of Vanderbilt. Actually, it wasn't at Ole Miss. It was technically a home game, but it was 3 hours down the road, basically. And so, in a last minute move, they've got a makeup game against Tennessee this week. So we'll be seeing that and seeing them in action. And they've, since they had a bad week last week, but anyways, just kind of a good story to go check out. It's kind of wild what it had just not been on my radar till we reported on it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have a story at USA Today this week about Richmond's Maggie Dugan's rising WNBA draft stock.
Nice.
So I've heard the Maddie Siegrist comp quite a bit. So I think that she's going to be potentially first, probably second round pick, but pretty cool for Richmond to get that. So, and I'll have more stuff at USA Today this week as well. I'll do a bracketology and all that good stuff. So I think that's all we got for this week. Anything else you wanted to plug, Lindsay?
Nope. I'm excited this is the time, right? We're here. So it's kind of all systems go. And I, for one, cannot wait.
4 weeks till Selection Sunday. That's Lindsey Gibbs. I'm Mitch Northam. We will see you next time. Deuces.